叫ぶ時はもう一度あの空を見たい自分に素直になればいい
Hi everyone, I'm Kitsune. Today on the podcast we're joined by our very own producer V, aka Purpose Unknown. What started as an impromptu recording session together turned into a very vulnerable and real conversation about things that were near and dear to both of us. From things like personal identity, finding acceptance, finding catharsis through art, and even a little bit of, milady discourse because we want to remain topical. I had a real genuine pleasure talking with V, and I feel very lucky that I get to work with a person who is so open and so ready to have difficult and in-depth conversations. Going forward, V will be joining me as a co-host for the podcast. As always, if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, and leave us a review if you can. Without further ado, here's V. For the folks at home who didn't hear it, we've talked about Car Talk for 15 stone cold minutes about why Car Talk is the best show of all time, and I will actually say I think this show is vaguely Car Talk-esque.
The crypto talk.
Because except instead it's flip it. So why Car Talk is interesting is you're listening to two people talk about cars, and you don't have to know about cars. We're two people who don't know about crypto. My metaphor is falling apart in front of my very eyes.
Right. We're crypto adjacent. Yeah, we're like the inverse.
We're autistic Car Talk. So you're calling in today, and you posted hentai on the timeline, and you only got 5 likes, and you're looking at this fucker Carnation, and you're going, well, how do they get hundreds of likes on posting hentai? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing the problem out there is? That should be a call-in. Yeah, fuck. It's like every time I get an idea for a segment and then I forget to do it, it's like we should do a call-in episode with Carnation. That's like a lewd advice office hours on how to get lewd posting right.
Oh man, I should have asked about that. I
skirted around it. In the first episode, we talked about this in the promo, which is funny to record a promo and then now record us having a conversation, but not having an idea of what the show is about. And I think in that first episode, I was trying to be serious to a degree, and I tried to ask intelligent questions, and I tried to do a real intro when honestly, I should have just been so you post a lot of Japanese cartoon pornography on the internet. Can you speak to that?
Right. Well, and to some degree too. I mean, you in that you and Carnation already had an established dynamic of sorts, knowing each other before that. So very much so. Yeah. I don't know. Actually more surprising than that you didn't lean into that more, or lean into that. I don't know.
I'm not a very good interviewer. I think it comes down to I'm not very good at interviewing.
It's episode 1. I mean, you're still trying to figure out what's the vibe.
Give me until episode 50, and then I'll be fucking dialed. I'll be dialed in. I'll be on my
that'll be
Charlie
the
Rose. I'll be
cutoff.
so V, you work a lot in VR chat. Interesting. What is that? I understand you dance with anthropomorphic furries and cartoon people.
Oh, it's glorious! I got to tell you, just all sorts of the characters you'll meet, and getting sweaty dancing.
I was hoping to avoid the word sweaty, but I guess in terms of actually something to talk about, there seems this very ride or die intense community on crypto Twitter around VR chat. Y'all, it seems y'all just be having parties on a regular basis. Being in some Discords or whatever, you see people being hey, we're all meeting up in VR chat tonight. And you seem very immersed in VR, not just in a social way, but in an artistic way. I guess why is VR chat so appealing to everybody? And then by contrast, or I guess by extension, why is it so appealing to you?
Interesting. It's funny because last night I gave a tour. I was giving a tour to a couple of folks from eGirl Capital in VR chat who are just trying out VR, who either hadn't for quite some time or just like trying to figure it out for the first time. And they were very
just
surprised.
like showing them around, making sure they didn't wander into like a
just different
Rule
worlds
34 dungeon or like
the case
Chinese
with VR
honeypot
chat
server.
The case with VR chat is more, public worlds with kids because
Sure.
which was very surprising to a couple of them. They were like, "Wow, so many people in VR are like, or I forget which one was said. I'm trying to make sure I get it right, but like the fact that a lot of VR people were not crypto native, and also the inverse. I mean, I'm not going to claim to be so bold as being like the sole person for this, but I do feel like I've kind of VR pilled a couple crypto people, bringing them in, and I've talked about business stuff in VR chat. Like that's forget Telegram chats.
Yeah.
The real alpha is happening in
in someone's
VR
public
chat.
server. Do you think it like is an extension of the like anon, culture? Like it is just another step further into like making your own identity that's like untethered from reality?
Oh God. I truly think it is. And tangentially to VR, I will say there are some interesting strides being made in, I mean, when people think of metaverse, a common thing they think of is VR specific. Metaverse,
Sure.
quote unquote, encompasses much more than that. But you have people like the metaverse makers and Webaverse and doing some interesting stuff technologically, progressing that forward. But VR chat, I don't know specifically what it is about it. It's just a large enough and interesting enough platform for people to get together and explore and connect. And there really is a sense of more connection. There's a difference between you and I having this conversation, talking into microphones, and, as opposed to quote unquote physically being in each other's presence.
Sure.
In a VR space.
Is there like a fear that is the next, well, I guess, you kind of already touched on that saying like there is an automatic metaverse association, but like when the next round of VCs and suits, like come for our space, like, is that the next frontier that they're going to be targeting? I mean, I'm sure everyone saw the terrible, like Facebook metaverse, like the soulless, grim
Horizons or whatever.
Yeah. And like, so clearly that's not compelling to, I imagine, anybody. But like there is something, there that I can't help but wonder if people are looking at like covetously or with, like very commercial exploitative intent.
So if we're talking specifically from like the crypto world, quote unquote, there is definitely going to be resistance there because we've actually seen this play out with another Webaverse type platform, Neos, which has two versions. They have a Steam game version, and then they have an identical version that also has a cryptocurrency. They have a crypto token that they were going to use for payments and stuff, and the community was very divisive because you at a point, VR chat and Neos and all these, they are social platforms, but they're games. And so you have kind of the anti-NFT gamer sentiment hitting
which is inexplicable. I feel like, I talked about that with Mono a lot. I find it, in the sense of like, okay, you want to keep not owning your digital assets and being unable to like resell games or get value from them. Like, fine, I guess that's your prerogative. I guess maybe like an even earlier touchstone is Second Life, which seems to me like super ahead of its time and super like prescient here, which also had its own currency. It wasn't a crypto, obviously, at the time, but it had like lindens or whatever.
I forget the exact term.
Yeah, I think they were called like let's call them lindos. Let's call them lindo bucks. But like, that was a metaverse-esque space that had a robust creator economy and like a robust in-world economy and seemed kind of like unhinged in a way that felt lawless. Like, there are those videos of people that will go like dive back into Second Life and go to like insane, weird, hand-generated BDSM dungeons or like fan pages for bands or, what have you. And it feels to me like, okay, we did that experiment. It was so huge. I can remember New York Times articles about those people that basically lived in Second Life. And it feels like we're coming back to it, except now the tech is better.
Right, and it's becoming much more immersive. and the tech is constantly improving. It's just going to be very interesting to see. And it's, cycling back to VR chat briefly, I mean, their stance is because everyone's like, what's going to happen in terms of future NFT integration or crypto integrations? They're like, if you have NFT assets that you want to use on our platform, fine. You just can't promote NFT or crypto. So.
Well, and that's like a good. I mean, that's as good a détente as you can ask for.
It's a healthy middle ground, and I feel like it's a gateway step into obviously the traditional. I say traditional, but like these types of platforms are obviously paying attention to crypto. And
well, yeah, and it is adoption. If I'm like some anti-crypto person and I'm in VR chat and I see someone with like some absolutely unbelievably dope like NFT related drip, I'd be like, actually, you know what? Maybe NFTs aren't. So how do I get that? You know, how do I certainly didn't really have much of a thought about like having a VTuber or any type of virtual avatar until I saw like Anata's, for example. And I immediately was like, well, that just looks really cool. And, you know, I remember growing up on .hack and being like, well, this seems to me like I'm getting closer to that. But, you know, at the same time, it is funny, like you know, it being a social space, I understand the hesitancy to bring in anything that, you know, like commercializes it or makes it in any way, you know, tied to like speculation.
You're detracting from the like organic human. Corporations are coming in and taking over. Oh, it's awful. Yeah, which I think a lot of people are rightful to being skeptical of or concerned about. People want to have like their little niche communities and, you know, indie type of things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing to me, like, you know, inevitably when we talk about cryptocurrency, we talk about the ideas of sovereignty and identity. And, you know, it is just such a natural melding of it to me. And I feel like the division there ends up being really clear of like the people on like crypto Twitter who don't care about VR stuff are, you know, like, yeah, are like people who are in it to like speculate and trade and deal in like certain parameters. And the people from like crypto Twitter who really embrace VR are people who I think are much more in it for, I mean, not necessarily the tech, but in it for like, shall we say, like larger or more philosophical reasons.
Right. Just, yeah, trying to explore like the in-depths of this whole, it's just bizarre. It's all extremely bizarre.
Well, I mean, you know, I guess then maybe centering it so it's less like broad is like what brought you to the VR space?
So VR, so this is going to be kind of a very twisted, not twisted in like a negative sense, but it's a very personal story in a sense of a lot of things. It's just interesting because identity, like this type of identity has been convoluted and formed a lot of different things happening at once. Mm-hmm. So for context, I want to go back to the crypto space first a little bit. My crypto journey started in late 2017. Which was, I will say pre-transition at this point. Mm-hmm. And I just was gambling and doing poorly with shitcoins. And I would get attached to projects and bag hold because I was very optimistic and believed in the vision of certain things, and just kind of rotated through that. And I started transitioning. I started trans woman. I started transitioning about late 2020, and I got my VR headset January of 2021.
Oh wow.
And then I joined crypto Twitter about early summer 2021. So in the process of building this person, V, quote unquote, this persona, I mean, it is who I am, but all of those different identities, trying to figure out from a trans perspective, from a VR perspective, and even from a crypto like social presence, all that was kind of happening at the same time. and still is constantly evolving.
Of course.
And VR was very January 2021. So I'd wanted a VR headset for many years, and I kind of got away with it under the guise of I want to use it as a fitness tool, which I do use, exercise and stuff. And then I think February I discovered VR chat, and it was an immense godsend socially, because we're in the throes of COVID.
Right.
No one's going outside. And so the ability to go out and talk to people and interact with people and explore, on top of trying to figure out what my identity is, trying to formulate who I am, was just a very interesting struggle. And I'm not saying struggle in necessarily a negative context, but just very, very exploratory.
Yeah. I mean, that the synchronicity of that timeline is like dramatic to me, right? Is the idea of we're in the pandemic. You are in the midst of transitioning, of finding this identity and understanding yourself, and like, you know, this technological innovation lands in your world, and it feels like this confluence of events that feels very impactful, right? Like that is like I would imagine, actually, you know, not to speak broadly, but I imagine that many people have similar stories, you know, and I think like kind of that's what, you know, we were touching on before with the idea of like the overlap of crypto Twitter and VR chat, and being like, I have license and freedom to explore like myself and my own identity and be who I want to be, unshackled from like this bullshit, terrible real world that we are forced to live in. Yeah, I'm kind of struck by like that timing. That must have been VR must have been a very intense experience then.
Definitely, constantly a very evolving learning experience. And I have to think of like, we could draw parallels in the sense of, you could look as crypto in the sense of exploring true quote unquote financial freedom, or having true financial control, broadly speaking. And you could look at VR or the metaverse, quote unquote, as freedom of identity, trying to formulate your own sense of self. And so now we're getting to the point where like those are kind of converging in some sense, trying to come together.
Yeah, and you know, I think they are so related. You know, there's that old saying, which is that you cannot be what is it, fiscally conservative and socially liberal, because fiscal policy, money, dictates like the conditions under which people live their lives in our society. And
Right.
And I think that is like another reason why crypto attracts so many people who have felt either you know, like repressed or marginalized or left behind, or, you know, across all spectrums. It attracts people who maybe grew up in poor or disenfranchised community by dint of being born in the wrong zip code. It is by people who have, you know, a gender identity that is outside of like the American Protestant, you know, fascist system that we live in. And like the understanding that like, well, wait, my money is tied, not just like the ability to pay bills, it's tied to my ability to live and exist with dignity and like opportunity as a human being. And then like, yeah, VR like builds on that. It's like, okay, not only can I have sovereignty over my financial situations, but now I can have sovereignty over my social presence.
You could almost argue either one could be a stepping stone to explore. It's like, okay, if I have sovereignty, as you say, if I have sovereignty over financial situation, what's stopping me from going further?
Right.
What else can I take control of? And it was, yeah, it was personally a very formative experience, because there's a lot, especially when you can remove a lot of limitations. You eliminate a lot of physical limitations and you're much more in control. You can shape your experience. You have a stronger influence on your experience. So for example, if you're going in VR, you have extreme control over how you look. You can pick any avatar. You can look however you want. And so in terms of social interaction, that's a barrier that's no longer there. So, you know, I don't have to which ties in with the transition thing. Like, I don't have to panic and think from a transition perspective, someone's going to look at me and they're going to see a man. I don't have to do that. I can rely on other factors to, there's a sense perhaps of being disingenuous, like, oh, you don't have to really know that I was a man or whatever, but you're in much more control, and it's extremely liberating, honestly.
Yeah, in a world that has done its best to take away control from people as best as possible, and to make people feel like they don't have control. It's, I touched on this briefly talking about it with Lawrence. Like, I'm very cognizant of my like place as like a white cis man, and I'm always trying to be very cognizant of the privilege that I was born in with society, and not overstep my boundaries. But I find myself like deeply moved and deeply like emotionally affected by getting to see people exist as themselves in the digital world. And I think like one of my problems with like the characterization of like crypto, like the crypto bro, or taking it further, like the crypto like libertarian fascist is like so. I mean, the media perception is like, well, wait, so many people I know building in this space are queer, are non-binary, are trans, are disabled, are like it is much more of a broad spectrum than that. And I find myself like very irritated. It's definitely should never be like my place to say, but every time I hear someone talking about crypto, I was like, it's not all just like those tiki torch looking motherfucker, Nazi youth haircut, like monsters.
Like the Charlottesville rally or whatever.
Yeah, like those guys look like the media vision of crypto. And I'm like, I think it's it is much more that there are people who are all working towards their own levels of freedom and their own levels of self-expression. And I wish I guess like I wish that was more front and center.
Was it Mark Twain or whoever, the quote of like, travel is the enemy of ignorance or bigotry?
Yeah,
or
completely.
Whatever. And the same quote unquote can apply to VR. Like, in a space where you can go effectively anywhere, quote unquote, and talk to anyone from any walk of life, it has definitely been very, I want to say humbling, but in the sense of like, I will interact with people, and the mindset is, I can't judge. Who am I to judge or, I won't know enough about a given person. Like, there's so much nuance with everything. Totally. And I think it's crucial for people to broaden their horizons in that sense.
I also think there's something to be said for the anonymity that makes me personally want to share more. Or like that I think drives people to be able to be like, I can actually bear a more truthful part of my soul. In the sense of like, there are certainly lots of times in my like, my fucking corporate day job, I don't maybe get to express parts of my personality. But with the mask of like an anime foxboy, I feel much more comfortable to like express what I consider to be more core to my being. Like certainly, trying to talk to my coworkers about growing up being queer is like, that's not, what I mean? That's like
very, very taboo. It's like,
I'm going to be around the Slack water cooler, and I'm going to be like, yeah, actually, whatever. But on crypto Twitter or any anonymous space, I feel much more freedom to do so.
Well, I'm going to be probably mixing terms, but there is like a psychological, especially anonymous, obviously, you're much more susceptible / encouraged to share because you're not likely to face consequences. Like, you're not going to face any backlash.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You're not going to face any backlash sharing anonymously. Like what's the Twitter account that popped up recently? It's like Coinfessions. It's just one submit anonymous, like, oh yeah, I'm really a fucking VC LARPing as being super poor and stuff like that.
I mean, some of those are fucking psychotic. Like, some of those are really, but I think that also goes back to like, that was the appeal behind the like origin of edgelord culture on like 4chan, right? Like, that's like, nobody, I can say whatever I want. Unfortunately, and I guess in that case, most of it was like, I can say whatever racism I want with no repercussion. But like, definitely the internet existed. The internet exists as a place to, be kind of an unfettered version of yourself.
You get the negative with the positive, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't know if we're ever going to get fully away, like the beautiful, like pan gender, like accepting utopia that I dream of probably is not going to happen without like, there's going to be like, like, I don't know, some guy with like the Heil Hitler numbers in his username talking about, like a race that he hates, whatever. Like I don't know.
By his favorite anime of
my favorite, a kind of a Japanese nationalist type apologist. a person who, I don't know. Also, I mean, the Venn diagram, what is it? Like someone once said, like the Venn diagram between like furries and Nazis is a perfect circle. Cause you see all those like photos from like furry conventions of people just wearing Nazi armbands.
Nazi uniforms. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the weirdest one. Cause I guarantee they probably wouldn't have loved that one back in the 40s. If you were dressing up as a wolf with a, I don't want to go too off base and anger the furries.
Just the ideological.
I don't know if the Führer would love you being like an anthropomorphic dragon wolf in the Reich.
You probably wouldn't last very long.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't make it. I mean, okay, I guess then to like pull back. So, your crypto journey, and I always think like wherever people really get like a few starts in crypto, right? It's wherever you like went and made, like you said, like you end up bag holding shit coins and gambling and you make your first mistake. And then a lot of people I know have stepped back for a few years and then come back with like a completely different mentality. It like doesn't strike me that anything, certainly when we've talked or your presence online is like tied to that kind of like speculative, anything like that. You seem much more focused on like, like these like community and artistic aspects of it.
Yeah, you effectively hit the nail on the head. I
do that once per interview. I get one exactly right.
This is it. This is the one. But yeah, I in the earlier years, quote unquote, 2017, 2018, I was aware, quote unquote, of like crypto Twitter, but I'm very much, I won't say like anti-spotlight, but like, I don't want to be the put focus or like build a brand or be, I'm much more of a support character or behind the scenes type of figure. And so I took that very much to heart when I started establishing my CT presence in last summer, which was, I genuinely think there are people who are doing good things, quote unquote, for the world. This kind of childish, but like naive optimism, like, I want to make the world a better place.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, in combination with a sense of, I'm not smart enough to be a shadowy supercoder, or so if I can't beat them, and part of me was like, I don't want to beat them. I want to identify good people who I believe are good people in the space, and I want to help them at any cost. Like, how can I boost them? A term I can't be the first person to have coined this, but a term I kind of like came up with is, we have the term MEV, minor or maximum extractable value. And instead, what I was looking for is MBV, mutual, or what is the most mutual beneficial value for all parties involved.
I truly believe you have coined that, particularly since that is like the most PvP side of Twitter. But like, and not to like connect everything back to anime, but like one of the most compelling things is like seeing a hero and getting to support them. Cause I feel definitely, very, very much the same way. And I've talked about this at length, so I don't need to, but like I, similarly don't have trading, coding, whatever. And I like being in support. I like being like a bureaucrat or being in that support role because it feels nice to be in service to something that feels greater than yourself, or to be part of something that feels world changing or aspirational. I think a lot about like the idea of, I've coined this term, I've written about this term before, and not like the idea of a leader worth following, is something that is like incredibly compelling to me. I think in certainly like the hyper individualistic, or at best like guild based system that we work under in crypto, like I find something very like romantic and fulfilling about, no, I want to be a force that uplifts in pursuit of a mission.
Right, having a broad, having a vision and being able to pursue it, and supporting people who hold those same ideals or that vision. That said, I do. It is concerning at a time, because I talked about this on the last one with Carnation, but it is concerning to like find the balance between supporting a leader type figure who you value, your values resonate together, like you want to support them, but also not falling into the type of idol worship where you don't, you put the rose colored glasses and the blinders on, like you're immune to criticism, like you think they can do no wrong type of thing. It's definitely a tricky line to walk.
And our space is like rife with that. And at like the most like minimal level, it is those like, like retail reply guy accounts that are just following gigantic traders and arbitrarily like worshiping the ground they sit on.
Putting bots that copy trade tweets and
or like, you mention maybe like me that, you say, I don't think it's acceptable that like Tetranode uses like transphobic slurs, and then your inbox is like a bunch of people like, this is my guy. Like, how can you say that's my dude? And it's like, well, number one, I guarantee he doesn't think about you at all. And number two, like, is it not depressing to live life, simping for someone on the internet who's ultimately using you as exit liquidity?
Right, exactly.
And like in my previous career, I definitely fell into like idol worship stuff a lot for the people I worked with, probably stemming more from like my issues with my father than with anything else. But like, yeah, there is, part of me is looking for somebody to be like, I will put you to good use. I am an implement to be used, and I wish to be used effectively. And it's, it really takes a lot. I wrote about this a while ago, I think in the last thing I wrote, but like the idea of being part of like a collective is so appealing, because you get to kind of stop worrying about, exigent factors, these intangibles. What am I supposed to do? Like the idea of like waking up, having purpose, having task, having person I follow, right? Having, I guess I am describing why cults are very effective. But, I think there is like something to be said for that.
You definitely hit very at home with the I am a utility to be used. I just the term I use is I'm a very goofy Swiss Army knife.
Right.
Like I hope someone can put me to good use, and so that's part of the whole, like, in also seeking out. So trying to seek out good people to support. So some of it is you have to have an accurate gauge of, all right, I hope this is a good person, kind of person. You have to have an effective sense of evaluating character when doing so. And then just kind of hope that they will take advantage of you in terms of,
in the positive, in the good way,
in the positive sense, and not take advantage of you and, be abusive or, yeah, exactly.
How do you think we do that? How do you think we judge character in this space? Right? Because that feels very tied to like the VR world to me, or like the crypto Twitter world. Like there are definitely people who you meet who, not saying that you have to live in the dark forest theory at all times, right? Like not always having to assume that any noise coming from the forest is you should just destroy immediately because you don't know its intentions, but like simultaneously not always assuming intentions are good. Like how do you think we get those reads on people in this inherently anonymous space?
these are the questions that I love and that are also torture because I never think I'm going to have an effective answer. I mean, you have to have some sense of your own values and then find those values that find people who hold similar values or values that you can resonate with. And it's hard because you have certain characters who I can't put like tangible words to how their actions are demonstrate how they act, but you just can kind of sense, be it on their actions or their words, that they are just a concrete force of good for a greater good, be it the greater good for the world or for whatever. Like I keep going back to Vitalik tweeted out at some point, Ethereum is neutral, but I am not.
Great,
type of thing.
Great quote. A fucking a banger of a quote.
Both an illustration, a true illustration of the tech that is available, that is deployed, that we have to deal with the real consequences of, and his values as a human individual, like where he stands.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it is always naive, maybe in a good way, to think of technology or any system or any advancement as being neutral, particularly when you're dealing with money, because money is inherently a non-neutral force. But like certainly in terms of like intentionality, I just think it's funny. Like we spend all this time talking about like trustless smart contracts and how do you solve the Byzantine generals problem, and all of these are technological ways of trying to solve for the fact that you cannot assume the intentions and accuracy of a counterparty, or you cannot assume the validity of information. And yet we find ourselves inherently trying to like make connections, make clicks, trust off of people, share information, etc. Right? Like there is something there that, despite we might live in a trustless technological system, but we are still driven to find something to trust in someone.
We're irrational creatures trying to rationalize our actions and rationalize the world to the best of our ability. But
yeah, I think some of that is probably like some Dunning-Kruger shit where, right, like it's like you think I am special and my judgment is special. And so if I understand something in some way, then that is the truth. At the same time, like, is it irrational to want to trust? Or is it irrational to want to make these bonds with people and understand their characters? Or is it like hyper rational? If you look at the like most effective organisms in the world, right? Like microbes, mold, bacteriums, fungal colonies, things like that. They are so hegemonized or so holiographically tied together that there is no question of trust. And it feels like we're trying to build something like that financially, and we as humans just can't get there. So we have to try and make that element of trust.
Right. It's forever going to be a dependency. I mean, it's one of those we can get to the point of, it's the weird balance of, you can get to a point where you can trust how a system works. You can trust that just applying it broader, like with programming, you write code to do a certain thing. It's going to do exactly what you told it to do. But it can't necessarily understand things like context or that type of thing. And so you have to trust that you've provided enough context for it to do what you want to do in the way that you want it to do. But then a step further, you also have to trust that people who are going to be using these trustless systems understand.
Right. And I think that's probably why we see so many like DAOs or protocols experience like an insider exploit, right? Because you are approaching it with this mentality of like, well, the code is trustless, the system is like built to so like it's actually anyone who's participating in it understands that. And like in the case of someone like Sifu, right, for example, is like, it's like the idea of like the prisoner's dilemma, like, no, I'll just defect every single time. Like there is actually, like if everyone in the room is deciding that trust is built into the system, then like you actually are incentivized to like, smash that motherfucking betray button every single time.
Every single time. And there's never going to be a perfect solution or a remedy to that type of problem. And which is not to say that attempting to find a perfect or optimal solution is a fruitless endeavor. It's certainly worth exploring, but people are just going to come up with new and creative ways to get around it every time.
Yeah, and that will happen in crypto or not. That is such is the way of the world. That's like the whole reason we have the fucking field of game theory, which is an excuse for people to be like, well, actually, people do things differently in this circumstance. Like, and never wanting to like lean on like we can categorize or quantify human behavior because there are just too many variables. But, I think there is something to be said. Like, if you can make that connection with a person, if you can establish that trust, I think then like, there is your solution. And like the idea of like trying to divorce what we're doing from the necessity in the real world to make a connection and build trust with people seems dangerous, I guess. I think like people will keep getting exploited as long as they are unwilling to be like, we really need to take a hard look at like how we're forming these interpersonal relationships on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, just the variable of like human intelligence and human understanding and culture, if we're going way bigger, of everyone holding different values and different perspectives and different perceptions.
Yeah, I wonder about that as well. I mean, that's like one of the things that I find missing so much is like empathy, is to understand those circumstances that other people or their like personal experiences. I find that's very lacking, and that's difficult for our community, particularly because so much of it seems so like mercenary or combative. I don't really have like a point to go with there. I feel like, if you and I on this call could like solve human interpersonal trust things, then we're obviously wasting our fucking time, and we should just go be rich and like fix humanity and like stop the Neuralink from being made.
We solve PvP. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we're sitting here not rich, and a lot of those PvP people are theoretically or presentationally wealthy in like a crazy way. So like, yeah, I guess maybe our optimism or like that desire for connection is like a weakness.
Right. Well, and especially, for the naive optimism, we do have to recognize that it's kind of like just with crypto in the sense of take a trader, someone is on the losing end of a trade.
Right. Yeah.
Always. So there has to be some level of acknowledgement or acceptance in that someone. I mean, I keep thinking to the interview you had with Monolith, like having it as a positive sum game where everybody wins. It's like you can't. There has to be an element of realism. It's just,
as much as we
where's the balance?
Yeah, I mean, the idealist in me always wants to kind of push towards that. Going back, not to change like topics dramatically, but kind of going back, you kind of in tandem with VR chat, you make like a lot of really like interesting and personal like digital and virtual reality art. And I kind of say, I know you and Karin talked about NFT stuff, and it's been talked about ad nauseum, particularly now as we are watching the implosion of several like NFT communities. But I wonder if you could like speak to like what drew you to make this like very personal, and not like reading into it too much as the viewer, but like, very vulnerable art.
I can divide that question into kind of two parts. And I will take the first part, and I will go with the vulnerable aspect as the first part, which has been in getting to know people on CT, and some of that kind of attributes to the like whole anonymity that we talked about earlier, the willingness to be open and not necessarily face consequences. I have, and you can, and the cynical could say you're just using this to manipulate and earn your way into inner circles, ha ha ha. But I've
never
been very never.
I would never do
but
that.
I've been very willing to expose vulnerable parts of myself first in an effort to gain trust, because I firmly believe it's like especially with people that I want to believe in and I want to support. I want to help people. You have a vision or you are doing something good. I want to help you, and I'm willing to potentially put myself at risk to do that. And
right, like what is it that animals do? A lot of animals, when they want to like make friends, is they like roll over and show their belly, right? Like they literally show a vulnerable point and put themselves at someone's mercy to be like, I am trying to engage with you in a friendly manner. And it's
a gamble.
Yeah. I mean, there's something there.
Yeah. And it's always, a risky gamble. And I've been very surprised at kind of the positive reception I have gotten to that in CT. And then, going forward, it just kind of evolved from there. I came into the space and I'm just like, I'm going to be a friendly and helpful face. And that is my, counter to perhaps the purpose unknown name shtick. That I think is my purpose. I want to help people, which slowly became a convoluted series of questions like, wait, people are receptive to that? To, wait, people want to hang out with me? To, wait, people want to pay me to be a friendly face? Like, what is going on here? What is happening?
I mean, that's as nice of a surprise as you can ask for. And like, it's just like striking to me that the avenue was art. Although I feel like maybe I pursued something similar, and like my shtick to like get in with people was like writing poetry. But your like art stands out so much from like other projects that I see people make.
And so to go into the art aspect, we talked about this whole convergence of like 3 crypto VR transition identities trying to kind of form at the same time. And so a lot of it was extremely exploratory in the sense of who's this person I'm trying to be? Who is this person? Who am I looking at in the mirror, be it a physical mirror or a virtual mirror? Who is this persona that I am trying to adapt, create, perform as? Like, what are the ideals I want to hold? What do I want to look like? And then what are the problems what are the problems? What are the issues I have to deal with in exploring that? And to some extent too, I feel because it's such a sharp contrast from perhaps the vision of myself that I had many years ago, like having a completely different mindset of who I wanted to be and things changing, which just speaks to how much life can throw you a curveball and change things. And to some extent, a lot of these illustrate a real struggle between like, can I formulate this as one identity, or am I going to have to pick, which, like two inner forces, two inner identities kind of struggling.
Inside of you, there are 2 wolves.
Yes, I was like, do I say it or not? Okay, thank you for taking that.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'll always do the corny cringe bullet for you. Well, I think it's, I grew up in a family of artists, and, something I've always been struck by is I've been around many artists who have a very difficult time expressing themselves or being vulnerable outside of their art. And then their art is this absolute like window into themselves, very earnest from like their core, like trying to say something.
The window to the soul.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I feel like I struggle with that as well. Like I have a very hard time expressing like what I think like the inner flame that exists within me is, like whatever what is my own like impossible soul can be. And it's just, yeah, I guess more my thing was like, it's so refreshing seeing that in between like generative 10,000 man collections and like fucking ugly ape art and potentially problematic PlayStation graphics, neo chibis, like someone making art that is like that it seems very like, yeah, very real, and that makes me feel something. I messaged you before we started working on the podcast together. I messaged you out of the blue just being like, V, I like really love this art. Like I had like a very intense emotional reaction when I saw it. And like I ran and like showed my wife, who is an art professor. And I was like, see, like people are doing things in this space that aren't just, badass bulls, Bull Island, stoned cheetah,
derivative.
Bucky. Yeah, like it's not all like people are making art out here, which like, you know, if we want to get like, I don't know, weirdly prescriptive about it, like the development of genuine art for art's sake is like an important milestone in any culture. And so seeing it in that emerging in our space, you know, felt very, very novel to me.
Yeah, and I definitely I approached it from a perspective of like, is there like an art niche I can tap into? Is there somewhere that perhaps hasn't been explored? But it also, we talked about like tapping into the art, the soul of the artist, like exploring things, get like truly seeing an artist, like their inner mind, their inner emotions.
Yeah,
I do agree that, as you said, like it can be very difficult to tap into that.
Yeah, there has to be a vehicle, right? And you know, this is one of those things that like really took me aback, asking like the community for poetry submissions when I was working on poetry stuff, is like a lot of people are actually very eager to express themselves in that way. A lot of people are really eager to have some practice of like introspection, self-understanding, self-auditing. You know, whatever. I started working on like a new writing project recently that I think I might announce or not announce in a few weeks. But like in doing it, I was like, I actually don't really care if I ever release this. It's like this practice of self-reflection that is much more valuable.
It's cathartic in a sense, right?
Like catharsis, right, is like the whole goal, and feeling, you know, having this disconnection in our life, not to sound like some fucking boomer moron being like, things were different before we had the internet and cell phones. It's like, yeah, you had like fucking segregation and goddamn we're like dying in a trench. Like your life sucks shit. Like the internet is great, but there is something to be said for like, I feel it is easy to feel a disconnection, or maybe even not a disconnection, but an isolation, that I think like art solves for a lot of people. And that is why like art for art's sake, I've said it a million times now, but you know, like we have to use a different word than art for a lot of these NFTs, because I don't think they meet the basic principles of what art is. Not that it's my place to adjudicate in any way, but like if you were to lock yourself in a room for a year creating, and like I just don't think you would be making a Bored Ape. I don't.
If you're right, yeah.
I just don't think so.
That's not what would emerge from.
Yeah. That's not like the chrysalis that blossoms out into a great butterfly of work. It's like, no, this is like a commercial object. And you know, I feel like as we get bigger and bigger, we will see more and more people moving in that direction. Certainly, by the time that people realize they've just been buying JPEGs. Right.
Yeah. And it's tricky too, just the creative process in general. Just like God, I don't want to like talk about myself for quote unquote.
You're getting interviewed. You can talk about what. I mean, it is a pretty good interviewer. So I was like, I don't want to talk about myself. You don't have, I never want to put someone in a position where they don't want to talk about themselves, but.
Well, it's like the right balance of not letting stuff like inflate the ego or trying to hog the spotlight or type of thing. Even if it is like, it's kind of a whole separate issue in terms of like power dynamics and that type of thing. But I was going to comment on like the creative process, especially it's balance.
Right.
In looking at, I have my collection up to here just on a webpage, and looking at a lot of these, I figured out how to kind of tap into that emotional soul to make these. And the problem is that soul is very much despair and depression and negativity, which
I don't mean to laugh, but that is like I'm laughing from like a place of like deep understanding. You know, that is, there are moments of like despair or longing or depression that are so difficult to communicate in any other way than artistically.
and they're a fantastic source of artistic
Oh,
creation.
you can mine that fucking those depths.
Oh my god! Yes, it is. It is just a. It is creatively immensely satisfying, and so. But the problem is, you sit in the pool of despair for too long. You're going to let that stuff
Right,
get
gazing into the abyss, et cetera, et
yes,
cetera.
exactly. The abyss will claim you. I mean, I mentioned it on a Twitter thread, but like I've had times in VR making some of these. I kind of just tried to foster an environment where I could tap into that pool of despair, and I was just in such a crying fit. I tore off the headset and threw it on the ground. I was just that upset and frustrated, and still kind of thinking this whole two identities clashing with each other thing. And so it's one of those knowing the right balance of when to pull back, or finding the optimal situation of not sitting in that pool of despair for too long.
Yeah, I mean, but what an indication that you are doing something that is personally impactful, right? Like if we did not feel those moments of like going too far, or of fear, or of like revulsion, or of falling into the pit, like there would be no indication that what we were doing was important, right? Like the moment where you realize that you are being tremendously impacted by something you're trying to create is like, to me, one of those moments of like, all right, I'm onto something, right? Like there is something here. There's a thread within myself that I am pulling, and within that unraveling is my art.
Right. And to cycle back, because we posed the question of how can you identify good actors, quote unquote, in the space, or good people, or for me, that would be, thinking about it, that would be an element. It's like, okay, if I'm making these pieces that are truly coming from at like an artistic and emotional, I really resonate with those types of people. And so to hear people such as yourself or other people who looked at these, even if they resonated in ways that I wouldn't necessarily have thought about, people look at some of these and they're like, I totally saw it from this perspective. It's like, no, this is speaking to something. This is speaking to an element of character within a person.
Yeah, it speaks that they are at least understanding something. Actually, that's like an interesting point. You have a piece, kind of like almost Persona 3 style, where you and your digital avatar flicker in and out before like pulling the trigger of a gun. And I remember seeing it and being like, yo, huge, like really feeling something from it. And it was interesting to me from like watching people react to that, be it in your comments, or after, like being extremely concerned for you, which I think is a nice place to come from, of course. But to me also indicated like, oh, maybe people have not seen art that pushes or explores something that is like truly challenging or difficult or horrific, and conflate it so much with like the art with the artist, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, and then, you can go into the whole death of the author. Can you separate the art from the artist type of thing? But yeah, and which again is a point of exposing that vulnerability. Like on that one specifically, I remember putting on the tweet that is like, I was not okay when I recorded this. I'm fine now, but being very honest and upfront, and yeah, and then having people reach out and, out of concern, and that, again, another kind of character identifying aspect of, all right, the people who understand it, the people who this resonates with, the people who care, who you can have that type of emotional, I want to say like emotional connection, but like that sense of emotional or empathetic understanding.
I think that's a great, like, something, a piece that always stands out to me, because I see it getting circulated on the internet every now and then. And it's oftentimes, if I see it in non-art circles, the piece is Ross in LA, Portrait of Ross in LA by Felix Gonzalez Torres, which is just a corner of a museum of candy weighing the weight that his lover weighed when he died of AIDS. And was created in response to like the AIDS crisis and the stigma around it. And I will inevitably see people, and it is just as wide a range of like random bros to like those like Midwestern judgmental like moms always saying like, well, how is this art? My kid could make this. Or the same thing, like Rothko is a great example. I saw someone on crypto Twitter repost a Rothko and be like, literally, why would someone buy this? And I'm like, there has to be something missing, right? That is, there has to be something missing in this person to miss the resonance there, or to miss like the emotion behind it. Because like I saw an installation of the Felix Gonzalez Torres piece, and it's like horrific. It is like intensely emotional to see, and then to like see people online be like, it's a pile of candy, like I could do this and get $1 million from the MoMA. I don't know why I default to Baltimore accent when I do those kind of people. Just like, it's fucking candy. But like that, like I see the same thing. The same people who will rush to tell you why an NFT is valuable, that is clearly bullshit, will look at like a Rothko or like a Gonzalez Torres and be like, well, that's just, my kid could do that. And I find that I find myself like curious. I find myself very genuinely sad for those people of like, there is something either learned or something that you repressed or something that is just refusing you are refusing to see what this art is.
To understand kind of the human condition. Some of which I think there's a point where you could say, all right, they don't know the full context behind the piece. Because you will have people who will, first glance very confused, and then upon learning about it, it's like, okay, no, and actually, that level of, as we talked about before, that kind of introspection or looking in and critically thinking about it and trying to reflect on, the meaning behind the piece. Yeah, that I do agree. It is sad and to some extent frustrating to see that missing from some people. And to go tangentially kind of to VR chat, I feel like that type of platform, as I told someone, to some extent, a lot of people are on there. And so crypto Twitter kind of ties in with that, because we're all very frustrated with the current reality. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to use any means to either change the reality to what, make the world as you see fit, be the change you want to be in the world, or escape reality. And that sense of escapism or wanting to change the world, or frustrated with the current world, or, that type of liberating freedom, for lack of a better term, and talking with a friend, I was like, we're all kind of broken in that sense, and we think reality is broken, and that's why we resonate so strongly with each other.
Right.
Because that's a very strong common thread of, we're very frustrated with the current, we're either very frustrated or bored, or the current state of affairs is not enjoyable.
Yeah.
And so we want to escape it, and we can bond over that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, right? Is like this feeling of discontent and of dissatisfaction, right? Like the world does not reflect me, or I am not reflected in the world that should be. And right. I can no longer be party to it. I guess in like a broad way, that is probably like the underpinning fear for a lot of people that I know in like the outside money coming in, or the VC money coming in, the corporate money coming in, BlackRock coming in. It is like we are already living in this like neo-feudal digital serfdom. And if we build a place of inclusivity that is supposed to be different, the first thing that those outside forces do is, I'm going to change the term. It's like, how can we maximally extract value, right? Like you build something, and the first people to show up are like, well, how can I commercialize it? I saw today, it was Taco Bell is doing like drag queen brunch as like a corporate thing. And I was like, this is the exact like, you are the motherfucking enemy. Do you not get, like, do they, like, who at Taco Bell was like, we as like this corporate fast food poisoning the world thing waste producer are going like, actually, there's like, we can make X% revenue if we co-opt the LGBTQ or drag culture. And I'm just like, is that like inevitably the path of all of this? Like, cause that's how I felt going back to like when I saw that Facebook metaverse thing. I was like, oh shit, they just want to eat this because they see it as another area they can control.
And just looking at, trying to co-opt the human elements. I forget the tweet. It was an older meme, but it's like I'm working on a PowerPoint presentation on Twitter, and then the official like PowerPoint or Microsoft account tweets, "Oh, what are you working on?" It's like, "Oh, working on corporate entities trying to personify themselves
right.
and come across human."
The crab with the laser eyes meme, be gone, brand. Like, yeah, for sure.
Yes, exactly. Which is the weird balance. And, obviously there's a right to be skeptical or cynical of the situation, but like, how many times have you seen oh my god, the Wendy's social intern is really slapping
They're really
it tonight.
popping
like,
off today. They're dissing
like,
Taco Bell. Yeah.
Right. And in some sense you can both say that, like agree with that, like think there's a person behind that Twitter account that is really coming across, however simplistically, like connecting in a human way, and also be like, okay, but they're working for a corporate entity, so
yeah,
it's not
I go the other way. It's like some fucking intern with a gun to their head who has like UCB right, like did stand up or whatever, and is now like chained to a desk, being like, you have to have 5 clapbacks. You have to
make them.
You have to say "Yas, Queen."
Buzzwords, you gotta make sure we get people saying it's bussin'.
Did you see that this? Yeah, it's like, yeah, back like everyone, like every corporate crowd, like, our new chicken sandwich is on fleek. Like, is it on fleek? Motherfucking Willy Ninja? Are you sure? Fucking Paris is burning?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I get so fatalistic when I see that, because I went to school, far in the past for advertising. And which was like the grimmest, obviously, like most emotionally and bankrupt thing I've ever done. And I am glad I did not pursue it further. But yeah, like, watching these who is it? Ryanair, the fucking Irish airline or whatever, the other day, like tweeting it down bad crypto accounts, being like, looks like you could afford our economy class. It's like, just like, please fuck off forever. Also because, like, I don't know, this is like, I don't know, I'm not trying to be soft skinned, because I'm not, like too many accidental cartel decapitation videos when you're 13 on the internet too early, I feel like just killed a part of like nothing will shock me. But like, there was like watching people, like brands, like celebrate like a crypto crash or make jokes about people losing all their money, and then you see like, like a half a dozen people kill themselves because of the USTD pegging, right? So it's like, yeah, very funny. Yeah, I mean, at the same time, if any of the, you see it a lot. I have an embarrassing fondness for TikTok, which I feel like you and I are pretty much the same age. Like, I feel like anyone in our age range like has this like kind of like connection with social media in a very bizarre way. Like, I was talking to Lawrence about like his favorite TikTok videos, but like you'll see like socialist content creators get like commented on with a brand, be like, yes, and then they'll be like, well, have you raised the minimum wage or grounded your jets or stopped using like like Monsanto products? And the answer is like, no, it's just like all lip service. And the only like saving grace is, I think people are at least a little more aware of it. I sincerely doubt there are a lot of like Zoomers being like, oh my god, that Amazon is just like me. I'm pretty sure they're like, this is like cringe.
Yeah, sorry, my cat is here next to me now, wanting attention, so you might hear him.
We'll cut that out and react to it like I said something really good.
Yeah,
so true. Can't totally vocalize the crown emoji.
Yeah, I will have to say, I do not use, nor am I a fan of TikTok, honestly. So I'm gonna go against
You're
the
gonna
grain.
do, you're gonna do me dirty like that on our podcast. You're gonna do me dirty, make me look like an absolute fuck.
Hey, excuse me. Am I not the sober canon? The sober sounding board to your?
Oh yeah, for people listening at home, V's drinking water during this one, and I am not.
So we'll see how well this devolves. I mean, we're an hour and 10 minutes in, and I feel like we haven't hit the perhaps Freudian slip type questions of or
The Freudian, we always want to get you in a gotcha situation here. That's like the real point of this podcast is I want to catch you slipping.
throw a curveball and then oops, yeah. But which oh my god, both my older sister and my wife are very obsessed with TikTok, and my older sister has a TikTok, and I'm just
god. Like doing like dance trends and shit, or doing like
no, she rants about her job mostly.
So sick. I mean, it works.
But
you see someone doing that, and you can be like, "Oh man, I can do that. I'm gonna hang out in the Starbucks drive-thru."
Several TikToks by my wife. I definitely understand the appeal. I truly do.
It feels like you and I are in opposite positions because my wife does not care about TikTok, so I'm always like showing it to her, and she's just like stone faced, like, "Why is that funny?" And I'll be like, it's okay, I guess it isn't funny now that you say it out loud.
I mean, my wife will show me ones that are funny or that I can relate to, but it's just one of those sometimes like I'm trying to focus on something. Can we ADHD brain don't come and distract me because that's gonna. She does it out of love, I have no, but yeah, it's just a.
That's actually an interesting thing. I kind of thought about a while ago, and I didn't think we would get to here. But when I was listening to you and Carnation talk about the Milady drama, and I had my own hot Milady take that now in retrospect maybe was not not my best take, but there is something like talking to you, talking to Lawrence, like we're all married, like adult people. One of like the weirdest things about crypto Twitter has been watching people like fall in love or like make relationships, and like specifically watching like Milady people like be like, I was at a rave, I met this person, we're together now, my life is amazing. Like, I don't know, I feel like, in that kind of like elder way, like watching these like young awkward online people like find true love, I'm like, maybe things aren't so bad after all.
No, of course not. And to some degree you want to root and encourage them. I have a crypto friend who will not be named who should be going on a date tonight, and if he hears this and he didn't ask the girl out, I'm going to be very disappointed because I've been pushing him to ask this girl out for quite some time now.
Yeah, I mean, it was
kids.
I mean, that is like the funniest. That is one of like the funniest parts to me that's come out of it. It's like also like the divide in talking to people, and the man like, I'm like, I have no capacity anymore to like go out to like raves and nightclubs, but I'm so happy your kids are doing it. You kids are having a nice time and falling in love. Do you feel like we're like noticeably old for crypto Twitter? Lawrence definitely is. Lawrence is definitely Lawrence. I'm just like full talking shit. Lawrence is definitely, he should not be on here. The man is too old.
It's weird because there is definitely the sense of there are significantly smarter snot-nosed punks doing the shadowy supercoding type of stuff,
right?
But to some degree, it's I can kind of play into that a little bit with the whole support shtick, because in quite a few circles I'm kind of seen as like the mom figure. It's like, all right, you kids can do the MEV, do the trading, whatever. But you have personal problems, mom's here. You can come
do
talk.
The MEV sounds like you kids enjoy smoking your marijuana leaf and
pornography and watching the TikToks,
doing your doing your femboys and your well, I mean, it's funny. Like
we are literally the "Are you winning, son?"
It's really. I mean, I joined a Discord and like 3 people when I joined said like, "Will you adopt me?" And I'm like, I'm not that old. I'll be your older brother. Like we're doing some cringe like forum RP if that's what it takes. But like, yeah, I don't know. It is the age gap is definitely very funny, very, very, very funny to me.
Yeah. So and it's all about how you approach it and take it in stride too. And so it's kind of inverse with some friends because exploring this kind of identity, which I feel like I lost a good, not like lost, but perhaps didn't get a chance in terms of like a childhood to enjoy it as much.
I think that's very fair. Go there.
I'm the very older kind of like mom figure protective, but I'm also extremely childish in behavior. And so, people calling me the mom figure, I'm like, the irony is not lost on me. I
think, talking about identity, there is something there, like, certainly in people who have not gotten to have like their authentic, like self-identity or gender identity or sexuality, or, like people who have grown up in like very traumatic situations or, like abusive situations, you do kind of, this is an opportunity to make up for lost time, right? Like you get to be the self you wish you were in high school, or you get to be the child that you wish you were. Like you get to, and certainly like I've talked about this before, like, God, it's just so nice to talk to people about anime because that certainly wasn't cool when I was a kid, or it's like, man, it's so great to like, shoot the shit with people that was not, really feasible within my like town I grew up in. You know what I mean? Like part of the advantage of it is like, yeah, might be semi-boomered out, but I get to have this space to be myself and the self I always wanted to be.
Which speaks to the power of technology in general that we can do. We can have these types of interactions and socialization. So
thank you, technology. Yeah, we love. We love technology. We're so pro technology. Yeah, when it works, and when it's not like controlled by the State Department.
Yeah.
We can cut this. I'm kind of thinking of where to go next. We should have like a marker,
cut
like
end scene
here. Don't know.
The
Lawrence one I had to make like 3 cuts. So.
Oh sure.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know how much of that too in terms of like audio cleanup or stuff you wanted me to work on.
All of that. I mean, look, we're operating on a laissez-faire system here.
Very
as far
casual.
As we're keeping it so casual. Keeping it so casual, talking about AIDS crisis art and transitioning, and
it's a 2-person DAO. We're just both operating independently. And it's just ship it. Just ship it no matter what.
Send the fucking product.
Minimum viable product.
We are the minimum viable fuck. Damn it, we should have
viable podcast.
Are you kidding me? I needed some bullshit historical minimum.
I have to point out because people were looking at me when I did the carnation interview, and they were like, "What the fuck is Kitsune's podcast?" Well, I know he has a podcast, but that's its name. Is this the pivot point? Are you rebranding, or how are we?
I can't do another rebrand, just to be clear. And I got actually some cool messages from like 3 people about the name, but that is God. Maybe that's just the description. I'm like in physical agony. I'm like angry. I'm angry at me. I'm angry at you. Like I'm fucking furious. That is so good.
Well, okay. Let's see if we can put a salve on the wound because.
So everyone, podcast is over. We're gonna do a new podcast.
Okay, so there is already, it looks like, a couple different minimum viable podcasts.
Okay, see, so fuck you guys. I was original.
Right, see, so the salve on the wound
get up off my page. Stop talking. Yeah, listen, I did something original, okay? I stole the name of a rice exchange from the 1600s, okay? Listen, I did the same thing I always do, which is appropriate Japanese historical culture. It's not an easy job, but I have to do it. I wonder how much of that we should cut. Now I'm just like, now I'm just riffing. I put my seat back a little.
Probably put some of that in like the intro, like the minimum viable. Fuck, now we have to rebrand.
That is exactly where that's going. Oh yeah, you should come out as like very pro Charlotte Fang on this. Like you should just have like a really controversial opinion, or be like, I think it's good. I think it's actually good that Yuga Labs is buying everything. You should just have like a really like controversial opinion.
A very spicy thing.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically with the Milady thing, I felt bad on the Carnation one because I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough to. I feel like I downplayed. I was like, oh, you know, some weird ideology
Yeah,
stuff.
and then it's like
you know,
a legitimate like anorexia cult saying the like slurs.
I should have looked into that more, and I did not.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it like very real with you. I definitely did not do what I would describe as a lot of due diligence when I just blasted off a tweet like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, that stuff is also like ground down into the ground. You know, it's like every hot take imaginable on that has been made, and you know, there is just no. Yeah, we're not going to say shit. We're not going to say anything. I also don't want to get like a pipe bomb sent to me by a fucking milady. And I say that.
Okay, perhaps I will provide though a slightly spicy take, which is I think with the miladies, a lot of the takedowns, a lot of the analysis, a lot of the anti was rightful
for sure.
But I can't help but think there is a very subtle degree of virtue signaling with people who are like,
V. Yeah, I mean, come on, folks.
I want to say it's obvious, you know. Do it. Yes, I know. Great, you're burning your milady. Fantastic.
I mean,
it's like the 90th tweet from you on the timeline about it. I think we get the point.
Good for
you
fucking
don't like
you. You know, like, yeah. I mean, there's a degree of and you know, we do a little virtue signaling around here. Certainly, when what was my man's name, Brantley. Came out as being what I can only describe as some type of like medieval ages style Christian.
Devoutly.
Yeah, I did a lot. I definitely got, I maybe went a little hard on my virtue signaling, you know, which I can own up to. But like in this one, I was like, man, it's a fucking like weird NFT that spawned a life of it. Look, we got to see motherfucking Jepsen and Dunebug fall in love, okay? And you want to burn these? You want to burn these when two hot people fell in love? How dare you?
It's like, don't, you know. And it was definitely shocking in the sense of I'm looking at this and I'm like, and I'm looking at the people who own Miladies and I'm like, this Venn diagram, these are two separate circles. These do not compute at all.
There is
the community just took on a life of its own.
And that's like the whole point, right? Is like this whole thing, and we've seen this happen in like DAOs or projects, protocols where things get fucked up before, you know, the community steps up. But I'm like, really, how can you look at the people who are very vocally milady, and like, I will say milady to the core, and be like, yes, these people are condoning like racist weirdo chats. No, they like these things that look like they got printed in a Shibuya photo booth in the 1990s, right? Like conflating them is rough. Now, when the reckoning comes for Bored Apes in whatever that looks like, fingers crossed, I will absolutely be virtue signaling. I will be like, this is unacceptable.
This is awful.
How dare you? Yeah, I mean, I guess that even had a thing. I remember a Twitter space saying, all I saw was the headline was like, are Bored Apes racist? And I was like, I closed Twitter. I went outside and touched grass. I was like, I don't want to touch.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Now someone's going to call us ableist for saying touch grass.
And it brought up a point that I couldn't help but think about because we touched briefly on like the whole death of the author, separating art from artist. And I posed this as a problem, which is solvable in a sense if it depends on the platform. But I was like, okay, the ladies can take the community back, or they can sell the ladies.
Right. Like,
but if you do, you're giving royalties to the team still. So I don't know that that's the best course of action. How do you
got to decide to what extent you want to be up in arms that day.
Yeah.
And you know, like certainly the death of the edgelord 4chan culture, or like at least its remission, I think is good for the world overall. But I think we are engaging in a dangerous game of naivete to be like those group chats are in any way exceptional. You know what I mean? Like they're in any way singular. Have you ever talked to a 14-year-old boy on Xbox Live? Have you ever been in a COD lobby? Like the hateful, like weirdo, edgy rhetoric will always be out there. And I find it like this is not the end all shit. I feel like I'm tiptoeing up to a line to getting canceled, but this is not so out of the bounds of imagination that it negates
No, yeah.
it negates the community.
People and so there is a sense of cautioning people, but also people having to come in with that sense of awareness, you know, which is the same as any type of community. You have the good and the bad.
Well, and NFTs are even more in a stage of like being gullible like that, because people are still kind of like, this team is just trying to make like art and we're all going to make money. It's like, you can think that if you want, but I guarantee you, at the very minimum, most of these teams are devoted to profit, and most of these teams are probably not led by paragons of fucking humanity.
Right. A healthy amount of skepticism, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the fucking...
or perhaps, as I like to do it, cautious optimism.
People could
because I'm a naive sucker.
Oh yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I will fall for one of those easily. I feel like I'm a prime target for like phishing or something like that, just because I'm genuinely like a credulous person who wants the best in people.
Which goes back to the whole, you know, like trying to find your place, purpose, people taking advantage of you. It's just, you know, a perfect an opportunity. I can be useful.
Right. I mean, that is the danger.
Yeah, that's a real danger.
The danger to wanting to be, you know, a participant in something special. I mean, you know, earlier when I said I'm describing a perfect cult, I mean, like that is, you know, like that feeling, that is a very intoxicating and you know, intense experience. And I feel like people will fall for it. I honestly feel like you can, if you go into like Coin Market Cap, like comments under coins, you can see people that have kind of engaged in that kind of credulous thinking and are suffering for it. And you know, as much as like you know, may the buyer beware, code is law, whatever, like Dark Forest theory, it's like, no, the vast amount of people are going to justify to themselves to be like, I'm actually doing something good and special, and the person who's leading this is good and special.
Co-opting that as part of their identity. And you can flip that too. Go back to Milady's, like, am I looking at a Milady PFP profile picture and thinking that person obviously associates with Charlotte and believes everything? No, of course not. But you have people that will.
Completely.
And so there's definitely, and it's not a point necessarily of gloat, but there's definitely an advantage of not having an NFT PFP or a stereotypical username
or hexagon.
Yeah, right. You can kind of having that type of forming your own full path and not being so susceptible. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the right balance is, because, you know, if you do believe in something, there's no shame in repping it.
Yeah,
but
I think that is like the middle ground to get to. I also think at a certain point, you know, I think a lot about this. This is like a really out there quote, but like Ian McShane, the actor, like spoiled an episode of Game of Thrones that he was on, and people got mad at him. And in an interview, he just said, "Man, it's just tits and dragons. Like at the end of the day, it's just like these are speculative JPEGs. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, like, everybody chill out. You are not you are not soul bound to this thing you've purchased. Like this is not it's not that serious. There are aspects of the things that are that serious: financial freedom, financial independence, inclusivity, fighting like bigotry. Those are all serious things. But like, you know, your NFT is not.
I mean, devil's advocate slight
love
counterpoint,
it.
since we talked about the emotional connection. I mean, not that I'm going to make the case that that's possible with Bored Apes or, you know, derivative PFPs. I guess I could say it's impossible, but kind of highly unlikely.
I mean,
But-
there's the Richard thing, right? Like, I am my punk. Why I turned down, you know, X, whatever, that copy pasta.
Right, yeah.
Like, sure. I think really, if we got down to the core, that a person isn't like, I actually am ape number 3827. I think it's more like,
Right.
I really like that this thing is worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
Although,
Some of it can also be,
I mean,
just some. Sorry.
no, go ahead. No, after you.
I was just gonna. I mean, some of that you can also like. It's become enough of a meme that people, you know, you're in it for the fun, the humor, and the community. I am my tubby, and my tubby is me. Or a lady, which maybe don't go around saying that one anymore.
That one's not. Well, the only
But-
person who really gets away with that is Lawrence, who now has such like a doctored one that is like so
Right,
out
yeah.
there, which I mean is the other solution. I mean, yeah, as someone who is not like an NFT buyer or feels like I feel attached to like, you know, the honoraries that I've received that are like of my like avatar, I'm attached to in the sense of like, I think that's cool. But yeah, like, I mean, feeling like an intrinsic attachment to it feels silly. And I also think it's disingenuous. I think it's disingenuous in the same way that bag holders have this like worshipful nature towards like, I'm not going to sell until this. I'm like, well, then you're a sucker. You are my exit liquidity. You have not maintained, you know, rationality.
Hits hard being someone who in the past was emotionally attached to
Come
bags.
on, you and I are the same way on this. I'm sure everyone is. You know, look, some of us here maybe bought Cope at $8. You know what I mean? Like some of us maybe did that and have to look in the mirror and confront themselves and go, I am my Cope. My Cope is me.
Yes. Look in the mirror, put on the clown makeup.
I mean,
You know,
that meme is truly. Just in the interest of time, to get to some lightning round questions for you.
Sure.
We kind of already touched on like your where your purpose unknown username came from, but the origin behind like the moniker V. Is there like a story there that you feel comfortable sharing?
Ooh. So I both genuinely have an idea and don't know.
That's a great answer.
So I'm going to. So V would be the step from being anonymous to pseudonymous because I am not legally named V, but I plan to be at some point in the future. Just a combination of both paperwork and laziness. But I came up with a different name because it was a different transition name, and then found out my previous choice was a name of a cousin that lived in town. I was like, oh, that could be awkward.
That's so awesome.
And then V, I don't know. It's like, all right, it spawned out of nowhere. It's a letter. It's fantastic. And I was like, wait a minute. V for Vendetta, which I've watched. Cyberpunk 2077's main character was V. So I was like, did I subconsciously co-opt it?
Yeah. Did you ameliorate those?
Right, yeah. I will never know for sure, but it just kind of stuck.
I will just say on a personal note, it's very hard not to do like cyberpunk quotes to you every time we talk and just like Johnny Silverhand voice. Because like it's like so right there is to do like V references.
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's kind of funny fitting too, because big into VR. I named my PC the VR machine, you know. So I can lean into that shtick a bit. I will say, tangentially, I have never played Cyberpunk 2077. I'd like to. I should at some point.
Yeah, it's good now. It's better than it was. It's mainly cool because you get to hang out with Keanu Reeves. The entire
That's big Matrix
and
fan.
Actually, for you, like the idea of like, you know, playing through the game, I'm like, okay, I'm this character named V. You kind of could just play that game and be like, they're talking to me. My friend Keanu Reeves is talking to me and using my name.
Oh, so personal. I could just, the immersion is there. But it wouldn't be VR, so it wouldn't.
Thank you, Immersion. Who is your favorite poster on Twitter.com?
Favorite poster? Ooh.
Like, who do you see and you're like drop a tweet and you're just like, your face lights up? Who's like on your notifications?
Oh, I mean, there's a spirit there's the spirit of like they're positive and nice people that I want to support and boost into space. So I would say I think especially in like the NFT art scene, like Etheria-chan,
Yeah.
I really like. I want to boost them and support them in their artworks. There's a Tubby Cat artist, Peritrago, who has really cute stuff, and I've animated one or two of their pieces. I really like them. It's not so much people, not necessarily like appreciate. Gotta be careful how I say that. Like I do appreciate them, but people that again with the whole like I think these are good people in the space,
Sure.
and I want to support them however I can. So
that's a good answer.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite anime?
Do I have a favorite anime? I'll be honest. I read much more manga than I watch anime. But
I mean, hit me with the favorite manga. We can go there as well.
Oh, I mean, there are countless like trashy romance mangas I would read as a teenager and reading now, and I don't.
You could just say Ouran High School Host Club, and everybody would be nodding and smiling.
I'd probably say Fruits Basket.
There you go. See,
if I were
right in the same.
A healthy, solid pick for me. It's just that has a very sweet kind of charm to it that I liked.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in my head, I was like, it's either going to be like one of those answers, or it's going to be like some really like deep, horrifying cut. Like you're like, yeah, my favorite is Freesia, and I like the part where people are throwing up and getting shot. Incidentally, that is my favorite manga.
Nice.
Do you have any like plugs, things you're working on, things that you want to spread or boost some wider attention to?
Well, I want to boost the podcast, obviously.
Yeah, we want to boost this podcast, folks. If you guys could listen to the podcast, it's cool saying that at the end, assuming somebody hasn't listened to the entire thing. If you guys could really listen to this podcast.
Yeah. Things I want to plug or boost. I mean, I am working on slowly some more NFTs in my collection. I probably do a brief plug for there's an NFT project I animate for, Lizard Lab NFT. They're coming out with some sort of Web3 game experience soon, trademark. So just they're letting me animate their stuff, and I have fun doing it. What else? Who do I want to plug, or what do I want to plug? Actually, can I do a personal? Can I do a personal plug, shout out, thank you type of thing?
Yeah, of course.
So, in this whole transition identity forming process, and the markets being what they are in turmoil and stuff, I was definitely struggling a lot emotionally earlier this year. And I want to thank someone who, because I didn't I'm not the type of like super negative emotional vomit all over the timeline. I was posting like, I'm kind of struggling and things are not going well. And I want to thank samczsun for being one of the few people who actually reached out in DMs and was like, I see you, I recognize you, I want to support you and make sure you're okay. Someone who, it was just a very personal and positive interaction. And I don't think I give him enough thanks for it, for kind of helping me through a dark time. And I want to tie that briefly back to the whole, like, we're all people here.
Yeah.
We're all people at the end of the day. So I definitely don't want people to feel intimidated by some of these figures, because we're all human and we just want to connect and help each other and have a good time. But
that is maybe the like most genuine shout out that we've had on the pod. And it honestly got me a little choked up.
I'm trying not to
although
let tears
then to transition it back into being the person who I am, Sam, please come on the podcast anytime. We would absolutely love to have you.
Oh, shameless.
Yes, Sam, if thank you for helping V and everything, but we got to get these numbers up, buddy. We got to get a little bit more, get a little bit of the spotlight. So if you want to step up, who else is struggling? Your friend Kitsune with downloads and streams. So, jokes aside, like that is very kind. And we had kind of talked about this before, but Sam definitely seems like one of those not the hero we deserve, or the hero we deserve and the hero we need. Like he is like this great, like a godsend. So that just to further cement that reputation of being a wonderful person.
Yeah, and just not in a sense of idolizing or that type of thing. He's sincerely a very kind guy.
I'm gonna keep idolizing him. I don't care what you say. I'm gonna keep idolizing. I'm going to keep commissioning the doujins of him as Sherlock Holmes and me as Watson.
Just straight simping.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We do a little simping on the pod.
Easy simp.
Simp. Just that's a good way to end. Just whisper simp. Well, V, I appreciate you coming on today. I owe you a great deal of thanks also for stepping in last week while I was traveling and for doing all of for people who don't know, V does all of the transcription and our snippets and posts on social media and is like the driving force now for why I want to make the podcast good, because it is, it used to just be like, well, it's just me. And now I'm like, well, my friend V is here. We can't let this one flop. So, I appreciate you, having a very open and candid conversation with me. And, it's been great talking with you. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Again, the whole impetus, you put out a call for help, and I was like, this is someone I think that is a good person and bringing value to the space, and I want to help.
You hear that, you pieces of shit? I'm a good person. Okay, you hear that? I'm a good person. I'm good for the world. All right, let's
all right, I'm gonna go back and listen to the podcast episodes and describe like, wow, Kitsune.
For everyone at home, thank you so much for listening. As always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe. If you can leave a review, I learned recently that reviews are very important in getting your podcast noticed. Share it. And a kind of call to action that we made in a little snippet that we recorded before this. If you have a story, no story is inconsequential or irrelevant or small. Every story is beautiful and informative and worthwhile. And we would love to give you the platform and opportunity to share it. So if you want to share your own origin story, your tale, what you think about, the things that are important to you, please reach out to us. And we would love to talk to you. And until then, have a good night. Enjoy, and we'll talk to you next time.
Take care.
叫ぶ時はもう一度あの空を見たい